Have a watch this conversation between talk show host Bill Maher and Senator John Fetterman, where the senator explains that he associated himself historically with progressive Democrats, and in the aftermath of October 7th, and seeing how those on the progressive left would give succor to Hamas and the attack that occurred, and were just so hostile to Israel and supportive of evil, it created such a massive shift for him. Really interesting conversation. Have a watch.
You said, I'm not a progressive, I'm a Democrat. What does that mean? What is that distinction? Because I don't think I've used the word progressive. I think I've said woke. I think there's a big difference between woke, and I know that word triggers a lot of people because it had a great beginning as a meaning, but words migrate, and it went to something else. I think there's a big difference between an old school liberal and a woke person. You say progressive Democrat. How do you describe this?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like I've just say, and I've been saying that for years, actually. I said that, I didn't leave the label. It left me on that.
Right.
And that really, after it happened on October 7th, I really knew that that whole progressive stack would be blasted apart, and there's not going to be any kind of way how the Democrats are going to be able to reply to that kind of, or respond to that kind of. And I really decided early on that I believed that was going to be the right side with Israel throughout all of that. And I knew that would going to be Democrats would continue to peel away and kind of walk away from standing with Israel on that. But that's where I decided after.
How do you explain that, if you can, that the people who consider themselves the most liberal have abandoned Israel, which was always a liberal darling, for the people who, a terrorist organization, the people who outwardly say they want a genocide, who outwardly are the one side of this who's against the two-state solution. Somehow they wound up with them. Why do you think that is? And will this split the Democratic Party?
Well, it does, because there's an appeal there, and I think you talk about that. Like last week, you really hit with the gender apartheid.
Yes.
And talking about a lot of these issues, and some of the most progressive and left parts of the Democratic Party are standing, for the kind of side that have kinds of organizations like Hamas or these kind of nations that there are no rights for women, and they certainly don't embrace the LGBTQ kinds of lifestyle. And even in Philadelphia, the Queers for Palestine blocked the Pride parade in Philadelphia, and I never saw that on the bingo card, but it's really true.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think more and more people are starting to wake up to first of all, the radicalism of the far left that is able to find justification, even support for what Hamas did on October 7th. And people are starting to be like, hold on 1 second, I didn't sign up for this. I thought that we were maybe trying to find ways to create peace in the Middle East and maybe trying to address grievances, but I'm not supporting it. There's nothing legitimate in addressing a grievance when it comes to beheading babies and raping women and taking hostages. And so people start to wake up in that perspective. But also, what's happening, and I'm grateful for this shift post October 7th, is people also starting to recognize that the supposed grievances of the quote unquote Palestinians, they're actually Arabs, but their grievances are not really based on a legitimate grievance. What's really going on is that it's just a hateful ideology. It's a radical Islamic worldview that is no different to what happened on 9/11. That was not resistance. 9/11 was not resistance. October 7th was not resistance. And what more and more people are waking up to now is they're realizing, hold on 1 second, we thought maybe there really was a genuine grievance with the Palestinian cause. And now we're realizing, actually, no, it never had anything to do with that. And we really should have realized that earlier. And some did, and more are now. They're realizing that if this really was about just genuine statehood, they would have had their state in the 1930s. I don't know if you've seen this, but I'll get it up on the screen, okay? This was proposed by the British as the map for how they would divide the land, okay? Have a look at this. So as you can see, Palestine, I don't know if it was going to be called that, but it was going to be an Arab state, was going to be the majority, and then you'd have a small Israel in the middle and then a international Jerusalem zone. And there's been numerous offers since, and they've always said, no, 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 we won't accept it. And for those who say, well, why should they only accept a little bit, or half, or even 80%, when they consider it to be all their land entirely, I'd simply say, on what grounds? There's never been a Palestinian state. They never called themselves Palestinians. The name was created by the Romans. They considered themselves Arabs. They came there in the 7th century. Meanwhile, Jews had been there many, many centuries prior, and have been the ones that are the only people that have established a sovereign Jewish state, a sovereign state, 2,000 years ago, and then again today. And they always maintained a presence there. The Arabs came from the 7th century after the Islamic conquest of the land. And so you also have to look at the fact that there was all this kind of anti-Semitism and hatred by the Arab leadership in the region prior to Israel's establishment. Not to mention the poor treatment of Jews in the Arab world in many instances throughout the Jewish people's long 2,000-year exile. So the truth is that it's not about legitimate grievance, and this really defines how you're going to see the conflict. This is what it all boils down to. Is it a legitimate grievance, the Palestinian grievance? Quote unquote Palestinian, because they only came up with that term and the flag in the 60s as a cynical ploy to get rid of Israel. They'd be perfectly happy to be part of one of the surrounding Arab armies that tried to conquer them in 1948. It's not about nationalism. Or is it a hateful ideology? Is it legitimate grievance or hateful ideology? That defines everything. And if you understand it's the latter, then you're going to start to take the positions that I've expressed and many people in the pro-Israel camp express, which is to say we're not going to compromise, we're going to stop the appeasing, we're going to stop seeking ways to give the other side political gifts when we realise all it does is just backfire, project weakness, and not solve the root of the problem. We gave away Gaza in 2005, and what did it produce? Everyone was so hopeful. I was watching some clips recently of people like Bill Clinton and Tony Blair and others talking about their hopes for what might occur once the disengagement occurs. This was in 2004, 2005. And of course, everyone was saying, maybe Gaza could become the Singapore of the Middle East. It could be a thriving community. They had so much going for them, beautiful beaches, so much that was built up by Jews, by Israelis, greenhouses, all kinds of infrastructure. But no, from day one, they fire rockets, Hamas gets elected, overthrows any opposition. And so, could it be clearer? At every single turn, whenever the Israeli side has tried to offer political gifts and appeasement, it's not reacted to with gratitude and an attempt at political normalcy, creating normalcy, normalizing relations. No, it's reacted to with violence. So the message is becoming clearer and clearer for people, and that's something we should be grateful for. Because imagine if we were convinced into compromising, making even bigger compromises, and only then finding out their true hateful intentions. We've learned the lesson. At least I hope we have. We cannot go backwards into the old paradigms of two-state solution and all these things, because that's what, in some ways, has perpetuated the problem. So we really must not go backwards. We must go forwards with a new approach, and we'll have more and more people recognizing the truth of this position. I'm Ollie Annisfeld, and you're watching JTV. Thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.